Leave it to Jerry. Jerry,
He's always
he's
got it.
always finding ways to just be bigger, bolder, crazier. I don't think I've ever seen that before. If you missed it, Jerry Jones and the Cowboys brought their own benches
Yeah.
to FedEx Field in Washington when they played the football team. And it's so weird. Like, it was so weird on the sideline seeing just like the big Cowboys benches. And I think it's like a double smack in the face to listen, FedEx Field and Soldier Field go back and forth for like who's worse at
Worst facilities and everything. Yeah.
No Overall, you never see the videos coming out of Soldier Field of like pipes bursting and poop leaking down on seats like you have this season in Washington. But man, I don't know if if that actually helped the Cowboys or not, but I could see it starting a trend of NFL teams saying, how do we make the sideline or the away trip feel more like home, more comfortable for these guys, especially in places that historically, like a FedEx Field or maybe even like a Soldier Field. I don't know, you never hear people necessarily complain about the equipment at Soldier Field, more just the field of like, hey, they got crappy lockers or they got crappy, sideline.
Sure.
Whatever, bring your own stuff if you feel it's just better or it's more comfortable. It's really fascinating, kind of weirdly like chess match that Jerry Jones plays.
Yeah, it's like a double whammy almost, because it's one, hey, we just want to have like nice places to sit on, and two, hey, another opportunity to put our brand out there and kind of and show the fans there in the stadium, like, yeah, that we're here. We're marking our territory, so to speak. And
that's great. I didn't even think of that. Like every time they cut to the Cowboys on the sideline at home, you see those Cowboys benches with the logo and the name. So you lose that when you're in a road game, but if you do it again when you're on the road, and maybe that's part of it too. I don't know.
Yeah.
Leave it to Jerry.
Exactly. You don't put it past the brand master to pull off something like that in terms of the marketing. It's also funny because it kind of reminded me of something too. Adam Rosso, a good friend of mine, and who was a sports reporter with me back in the Quad Cities, he was our Hawkeye reporter. So he covered the Iowa Hawkeyes exclusively. And one of the stories he did was how the Hawkeyes at Kinnick Stadium, the football team, is notorious for having an all pink locker room, which goes back to I think it was at least the early 80s with Hayden Fry, where, studies after studies were showing that, groups of men responded differently to different colors. And I guess pink was more, emasculating. So they decided, let's paint the whole visiting locker room pink. So there is strategy involved. A lot of these teams actually employ. And so I'm sure Dallas Cowboys just the latest example of that. So yeah, we'll see if there's actually more of that coming up. But I agree. I don't think I've ever seen that. And by all the reports from a lot of the ESPN reporters and stuff, they were all saying this was the first time they've ever seen something like that too.
Yeah.
So,
well, and if Urban Meyer had ever gone to the Iowa locker room, he would have just called them all losers anyways. He just said, if you get affected by the color pink, you're a loser, and he's not a loser.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
He wouldn't it wouldn't matter what color they painted for Urban. He's not a loser.
I do actually want to spend like 30 seconds on this real quick, because
it's insane.
It's absolutely insane. So for those of you that were apparently living under a rock the past 2 days, because this did get blown up all over the Twitter sphere and stuff, but Urban Meyer, obviously after the reports of just how he was treating his team, his staff, Marvin Jones came out and said, like the report said Marvin Jones left the team entirely because of how he was berating the receiving room. Then the assistants had to convince him to come back. That was just the tip of the iceberg. It turns out that, he was blaming the benching of James Robinson on his assistant, when it turns out that it was Urban Meyer that made the call. And just, thing after thing, right? He apparently called out his assistant coaches one by one and had them all give their resumes to him in the room to plead their case as to how they're a winner, because basically he was saying, I've won more than anybody in this room, and literally called them all losers per this report. calling them losers to their face and having them somehow defend themselves in the room amongst each other. Bizarre situation. Really weird thing for any leader of any sort to do. And then at the end, Mark, the thing that blew my mind out of all of this is, what isn't this an indictment on you then? Because you're calling the people that you hired losers. Well, they're your hires, dude. Like, what? It makes no sense. It's just like,
it's like off the deep end type of weird stuff. And you wonder, I mean, this to me, it's so interesting that the NFL and college football, it just once again is a reminder how different, they're completely different sports. 100%. And anyone who wonders why people fail in the NFL, but were great in college, it's because they're different sports. They are different sports. The play on the field is different because it is the best of the best, being coached by the best of the best, and being given the resources that are even better than the Alabamas, the LSUs, and all those things. Now, so not only that, but then the fact of the matter is, when you're the head coach of a college program, you are judge, jury, executioner, and the Lord and Savior himself. You're everything.
Yep.
And nothing gets in or out without you absolutely knowing and being that way. And this is the type of stuff where it won't shock me if in the coming months, especially if Urban gets canned and it really really unravels even worse than it is, which, it's hard to imagine what that looks like. But to me, it's the type of stuff I wouldn't be shocked if you hear former Ohio State people saying, or former Florida people saying, yeah, this is kind of how he is. Like, this is not unusual Urban Meyer behavior, because for so long they keep that stuff close to the vest. And a lot of college players, they back their coaches so hard because they recruited them. They gave them their starting spots. They gave them the chances. They won maybe a national title with them or whatever. They feel differently. But I don't expect players to come out against Urban. It's going to be those other coaches or the ADs or someone like that, or leaks or, reporters who are close to the situation. In the NFL, they don't give a shit. Like, they don't care. You're the head coach. What does that matter? Like, in the sense of no, you're yelling at grown men who make more than you. Like, they're going to tell people, that stuff's going to get out. So I don't believe it's a completely phony, made up report, because it's one of those where it's like,
well, and Urban said he is dedicated. Like, after all of the stuff, his only response to that report was, I'm going to find the leak and they're going to be canned immediately. It's like, wow, that's way to prioritize things here.
That's the speak of a college football coach.
Yeah, 100%. It's all about control and power.
It just goes to show Urban was never built for the NFL. And we're really learning that now. You look back on it, you say, don't blame Urban for taking the job. It's in Florida, near your home. You have they're offering you 5 years, a huge money, and you get Trevor Lawrence. Like, everything lined up. Why wouldn't you take the shot at it? But the dude clearly at this point in time, mentally, strategically, he's built to recruit and put really great guys in a uniform and then keep everything locked in tight. And that's the kind of football coach he is. He's not an NFL football coach.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he would have worked in the NFL in 1970. But this is just not. It's just not how it's done nowadays. And so, look, I mean, after the whole incident with him not flying back with the team after a Thursday night loss, I thought this guy's got to be fired at some point. And then now the latest, if he's not going into next year, then I'm sorry, Trevor. If it actually gets to the point where they keep him, I mean,
we haven't talked a lot about Lawrence's play this year because
it's been bad.
But it's been bad. And you start to say to yourself, I mean, especially with the fact that we haven't seen much of Trey Lance because the Niners are rolling with Jimmy G, and I think smart decision to do so at this point. Fields has been so up and down, especially with the disaster that Matt Nagy's been this season, where he basically got fired and then they unfired him. It's Lawrence and Wilson. Lawrence, Wilson, and Fields have taken enough snaps, and they all just don't look great. And I think coaching is a lot to blame, in my opinion, in the Lawrence and Fields situations.
Yeah, and Zach Wilson's obviously struggled, quite
big
a bit.
Injury for a long time too.
Yeah. He's had his moments. But yeah, it's not a wasted year for Trevor because he's still playing against NFL defenses. Like he's
Yeah.
getting that experience, but he's not getting the support, it seems, that is needed. I mean, he was the one that had to lobby to put James Robinson back in the game
Your
last
guy,
week.
James Robinson.
Yeah, I love James Robinson, man. I mean, one fumble, it should not.
6 rushes,
should not
4
be
yards or something for a guy who had over
Yep.
over 1,100 yards as an undrafted rookie.
Yeah, and for a team without any star power,
Yeah.
like you gotta lean into your playmakers, right? I mean, he's certainly one of their playmakers, no doubt. Very strange stuff there in Jacksonville. We'll see what Shad Khan does because this offseason is it's an important one for them. They got another high pick coming up and potential free agent signings. I mean, it's an important one for sure. But this is our first of the kind of switching formats here on the Football Lounge. So thank you all for joining us as we wrap up Week 14 here tonight with Monday Night Football, another big game with implications as well. But it was a crazy week for a lot of reasons. The playoff picture is now starting to take form and shape. So that's how we're going to kind of approach things the next few weeks here as we wrap up the regular season, is take a look at the playoff picture. So we're going to start off with kind of giving the AFC, NFC playoff pictures and discussing the games this past week that surrounded those teams. And then we'll give a look at some of those that are in the hunt and maybe looking at ahead to some schedules here to see kind of what we're going to be looking for over the next couple of weeks. It's very interesting. Mark, this was the week of almost comebacks. There were a lot of teams here that rallied after being down early and almost came back to win it. Washington, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Baltimore, Cincinnati, all of these teams almost coming back to rally, but just coming up short. So it was an eventful week. A lot of close games, and a lot of these games, whether it was division or interconference, really had some implications here for the playoff picture. So
for all those almost comebacks, though, it also was a blowout week. I mean, Titans,
it was too. Yeah, that's
Chiefs,
very true.
Saints. I mean, at the end, especially Bears, Packers in the second half. I mean, there was some blows. Broncos, Lions, Seahawks, Texans, and some games that didn't matter. Giants, Chargers, that score looks even better. I mean, 16 points is not great to lose by, but that game was not even close to being a 16-point close game. So it was a weird week in the NFL, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just seeing Mike Glennon still, starting NFL games. It's good for that guy. He's getting his opportunities out there. All right, let's take a look at the AFC here first, Mark. So the Patriots are 9-4. They had a bye this week, right? So they're 9-4 atop the AFC standings still. The Tennessee Titans are 9-4 as the 2 seed there with
Patriots
that shutout win.
And Patriots have the head-to-head over Tennessee.
Yep. So that puts them in good position there atop the standings. Tennessee with the shutout win over Jacksonville. So they're the 2 seed there. Chiefs keep rising up the boards as they go on this win streak here. They are the 3 seed right now, also at 9-4. So a tight race there among the top of those standings. And then to round out the divisional winners, the Ravens still top the AFC North, clinging on to an 8-5 record there as the 4 seed. And then as we look at the final 3 wildcard spots, the Chargers at the 5 seed at 8-5. The Colts, who were on a bye this week, maintain their spot in the 6th seed at 7-6. And then the 7-6 Buffalo Bills, with a close loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, are the final 7th seed there for the playoffs. A lot of teams on the bubbles, but we'll just kind of start there with that, those 7 seeds. We mentioned the Patriots on the bye. The Titans get the shutout win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. First shutout win at home, by the way.
Yeah.
To go in 2 decades, I believe. 20-0 over Jacksonville. Really poor performance for Trevor Lawrence. Throws 4 picks. Titans, they're starting to get healthy again. And Julio Jones was here, made some key catches for them in this one. Didn't knock the socks off of anything. And Ryan Tannehill didn't look particularly impressive, but I don't know. I mean, it's like, what are your thoughts on this Tennessee team? They had the 1 seed for a time, and now they're, it's almost like, you're supposed to shut out the Jacksonville Jaguars, right?
Well, yeah, absolutely. They're it's so hard because obviously the Ravens are the most decimated by injury team, especially now with Lamar hurting his ankle. And I saw John Harbaugh say he expects Lamar to play next week, but that could also change middle of the week depending on more testing and X-rays and how he feels physically. But the Titans, even though the Ravens are more injured, the Titans' injury to Derrick Henry, I think, is the most impactful injury to any good team in the NFL because it completely forced them to change the identity of their football team. You know what I mean? That is an identity-changing injury. I like that they still committed to the run in this game, and obviously it's easy to do that against a Jacksonville team, but you run the ball 34 times versus throwing the ball only 31 times. That's still what you like to see Tennessee being at. Yeah, they don't have Derrick Henry and they're not, a dominant run team anymore, but that's the identity find. And also you have to feel good about still crossing off and circling those wins that are like, hey, you predict them at the beginning of the season. You took care of Jacksonville when Jacksonville, has had some, they upset Buffalo in a weird game and things like that. For the Titans, the thing that's interesting to me is their last 4 games none of them are against teams that you feel are as good as them, but they're against teams that 2 of them are peaking right now. One of them, so they have the Steelers next, which the Steelers have shown us they can beat and lose to anyone and tie anyone, as well. But that's a cling to life game in Pittsburgh for the Steelers to try to keep their season alive. Because again, the Steelers still have an opportunity to get to 10 wins, and that 10 win mark is seemingly to be so important for all these wild card spots. But then they host the Niners, they host the Dolphins before ending the season with the Texans. So it's not an easy slate for Tennessee down the stretch. But I do feel as though the Tennessee Titans, because they're already a 9-win team, again, they're trying to get into the playoffs at this point in time. They can win one of those games. That 10, they're in a pretty good spot, in my opinion, to feel comfortable about getting into the playoffs, get to that 10 wins. Seems like it's going to be a magical mark in the AFC. If you can get to 10 wins, you should feel pretty good about your chances of getting in because they already have 9, even though they have a pretty decent, hard schedule down the stretch with the Niners, with the Dolphins playing really good football right now. Can they take care of the Steelers and take care of the Texans at the end of the year, get to 11 wins? I think they can.
Yeah, that's probably the magic number for Tennessee, and it'll be interesting to see kind of who they're rooting for. I would imagine they're rooting for New England next week. The Patriots play the Colts, so that's going to be an important game. For obviously the Colts. The Colts are not out of this division, clearly. They can absolutely compete within it, and so Tennessee still trying to obviously vie for that 1 seed because, as we've mentioned, since the format change, the 1 seed has magnified importance in the NFL now, given that you're the only team that's able to get that bye in the first week of the playoffs. It's huge. It's very, very important. So with Tennessee right there with New England, they don't have that, tiebreaker. You want New England to beat the Colts so that you can secure the division and keep, the Colts at bay. But you also might want the Colts to win so that you can kind of keep putting yourself in a position for that 1 seed. It'll be an interesting kind of dilemma, I guess, there for Titans fans.
And even though
moving forward next week, but
even though there's only 1 bye, having games at your place is still important. Tennessee has the head-to-head win over Kansas City. So for them to stay at the same win, if Kansas City gets to 11 wins, you want to be at 11 wins. You know what I mean? Like if they get to 12 wins, you want to be to 12 wins because then if it comes down to that, even though New England may have the bye or the streak to the 1 seed, maybe you want to be hosting as many games as you can, even if you don't get the bye.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, next week will be an important week for all teams in the NFL, but yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, and do the Titans, so the Titans don't play the Colts again. Do they have the season sweep on them? Because I know they do. Yeah, they do. They do. Okay.
So if the Colts lose next week, effectively the Titans have locked up the AFC South.
Yeah, they're pretty much within reach at that point of securing that and really feeling comfortable about their spot to even get to the 1 seed 2 if they're able to win at Pittsburgh. Yeah, because as you mentioned, there are some tough matchups, but you get to end the season at Houston. If it comes down to that, man, you could potentially rest your players and still win that game, which would be amazing. So that'd be a bonus there for the Tennessee Titans. All right, so the 3 seed are the Chiefs. They've been playing phenomenal football. We even talked about it during that really slow stretch. This was still a team that we're, really scared of because you know what they're capable of. And now they're putting it together. Primarily the defense is playing lights out. I mean, they're maybe not from play to play, but they're creating splash all the time. They're getting
Yep.
turnovers, they're getting pick sixes, they're doing those types of plays that can completely wreck a game. And to do it against a divisional opponent that, they've had, Derek Carr's had some success against the Chiefs. For them to do what they did against the Raiders, really impressive in a game that was a blowout basically from the start. I mean, Derek Carr and company didn't have a rhythm right off the jump. So I'm curious to see kind of what your thoughts were on that absolute, destructive 48-9 win in blowout fashion for Kansas City.
Well, in the 2 games that played the Raiders this year, it's 89 to 23 is the total score in those games.
Brutal.
The Raiders, again, I think the Raiders have they're at whatever emotional bump they had to kind of keep them going in the middle of their season with the dealing of losing Henry Ruggs, with the deal of losing John Gruden. Whatever emotional bump they had were like, hey, no, we got to band together. And you see that in sports and, guys rallying around each other. They're now, you could just tell it, massive coaching disadvantage going into games, especially against a guy like Andy Reid. For the Chiefs, though, 6-game win streak, and it's got to feel good that in that 6-game win streak, the last 3 games against the Cowboys, Broncos, and Raiders. Now, the Broncos aren't an explosive offense, but you held the Cowboys at your place to 9 points. You held the Broncos at your place to 9 points. You held the Raiders at your place to 9 points. So they've been doing it at home. Their defense has been playing good at home, and that's got to be motivating for the rest of the team to realize, hey, hosting games at Arrowhead, really, really important. Being at home, and your defense always plays better at home than on the road. You have the crowd noise. You have all those advantages of using a stadium like Arrowhead to attack the opponent's offense. The Chiefs, though, it's just fascinating because they turn around now and have a massive division game against the Chargers on Thursday Night Football this week. Remember, the Chargers beat the Chiefs. So if the Chargers win again in LA, Thursday Night Football, they not only have the same record as the Chiefs, but basically a 2-game lead on them because they will swept the season series as well. So the Chiefs would then have to make sure they have the better record than the Chargers to have the division. And I wouldn't count out the Chiefs even if they were a wild card team, because that would be like the most dangerous wild card team of all time with a guy like Patrick Mahomes, and no one wants to be hosting the Chiefs. But the Chiefs, obviously, Arrowhead is such a weapon for them. And now they have to go on the road to LA Thursday Night Football. That's a huge, huge matchup. Beyond that, it's not exactly easy. They host the Steelers. They're in Cincinnati, a Bengals team that'll be fighting for their playoff lives. And then they end the season in Denver, a team that is now 7-6. And again, their magic number's 10. They're trying to get to 10 wins. So none of these games, all the games rest for the season for the Chiefs are going to matter in some reason or way. They don't have a Texans thrown in there, an easy cakewalk win for them to get to 10 wins. They're on 9 wins again. 10 wins in the AFC, I think, is going to get you a playoff spot.
Yes, I think so too. And it'll be interesting. We can't really count the Broncos out of this division just yet either. They had I know it's a win over the Lions, but a convincing win over the Lions by 4 touchdowns. They're going to host Kansas City in the season finale.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility, that game, the Broncos control their fate to some extent in that game? That could be, maybe not for the division, although that is still within reach. If Kansas City and the Chargers beat up on each other, and then, the Broncos take care of business the next few weeks, go on a little bit of a run, they could be in play for potentially getting 11 wins or 10 there and having a tiebreaker over Kansas City potentially. So that could be an interesting
Well, the Broncos
dynamic.
have 3 fascinating games before that game. They host the Bengals this upcoming week, 2 7-6 teams. That is huge for playoff positioning.
Massive.
Then they're in Vegas, and then they are in LA, the Chargers, before the Chiefs. So everything's still in front of Denver.
Yeah, 3 division games right there.
Everything's still in front of Denver, but by the time they get to KC, hosted KC, I mean, would it shock you if Denver loses those 3 games? No. Would it shock you if Denver wins those 3 games, or is 2-1 and has a chance still battling? There are so many teams in the AFC right now that all feel like they're just a play away, going flip-flopping, and they could win and the other team could win. You know, I love Cincinnati's offense. I don't love their defense. I love Denver's defense. I don't love their offense. So that game already next week is a fascinating one to look at.
Agreed. That'll be very interesting. I personally think the Denver Broncos are going to get into this thing. I think they're going to find a way to crawl in and get the 7th seed or something like that at this point. The way their defense has been playing is just so good. Justin Simmons, by the way, made an incredible pick. That diving interception was amazing. And look, they can run the ball very well. I mean, if they can find a way to control the line of scrimmage the majority of games, they got a legitimate shot at getting themselves that wild card.
Regardless, when you start to look at these schedules, that's one of the fun reasons why we kind of changed the mode of the show at this point in time. With 4 weeks left, there's a lot of great games to look forward to, and so many meaningful games for teams. Now, obviously, you know, the Jets, the Texans, the Jags, and the AFC, they got to play someone. And if you're any of those teams from Miami at the 13 seed at 6-7, all the way through New England at the 1 seed at 9-4, you got to be salivating if you see Jets, Texans, Jags on your schedule. Like, those have got to be must-win, blowout, get-right games, because every other team in the AFC is capable of beating any other team for the most part. It looks like the Raiders, to me, are kind of falling apart a little bit, but everyone else, Miami, Pittsburgh, Denver, Cincy, Cleveland, Buffalo, and the low end of the AFC, I'd all say they're capable of winning a game against any other AFC team at any point in time.
Yeah, it's that conference. It is almost a microcosm of what the AFC North is, or what the AFC West is. Like, everyone's beating up each other, and so it's really a lot of parity within this conference. Whereas in the NFC, which we'll get to soon, is kind of the opposite, where it's very top heavy, and then, you know, a lot of teams at the bottom are vying for the bottom spots, but nobody's looking to leapfrog all the way from, you know, 8 to 2 or anything like that anytime soon.
The easiest way to compare where the AFC and the NFC are this morning is that the 7 seed in the AFC is Buffalo. Now, Buffalo,
right, exactly.
They have been playing really bad football defensively and running the ball, but compared to the 7 seed in the NFC, which is Washington, which team was predicted to be a Super Bowl contender? Which team do you still think has a chance to beat any other team on any given Sunday? That's the main difference. You know what I mean? There's the AFC has and then you look at like a 9 seed in the AFC is a Cincinnati versus a 9 seed in the NFC is an Atlanta or a Philly. Like, there just is a different feel to what those teams are capable of doing at this point in time in the season.
Yeah, and for added context too, the difference between the 10 seed in the AFC, Denver, and the 1 seed, being the Patriots, is 2 games.
Yeah.
The difference between the 10 seed, the Atlanta Falcons, at 6-7, and the 10-2 Cardinals is 5.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a big gap there, and that even extends, to even higher up in the playoff standings there. But the Ravens are the 4 seed right now, Mark, at 8-5. A really tough loss to the Browns, and an even bigger loss in terms of their quarterback, Lamar Jackson. You mentioned John Harbaugh today, saying they expect him to be back for this week's game.
Game.
You obviously need that. It's a tough call, because we were talking about this before the show. Like, man, you really want to make sure Lamar's healthy for the final stretch in the playoffs. Like, you don't want to risk much. And it being an ankle injury that he went down with in the first half here, that's concerning with a guy that, has had to make a lot of plays with his legs.
Yeah.
And has really not had as much of a rhythm this year as he had in years past. But it is important. You can't afford to kind of give him a week off, because this week means so much. What are your thoughts on this game in general? Obviously, it was like a must-win for the Browns, who now put themselves in the 8th seed in firm position there to compete for a wild card spot. Huge for them, But it was also really big for the Ravens too now, right? Because they fall to 8-5, and this division is now once again fully up for grabs for the most part.
Listen, I'm not going to tell John Harbaugh how to do his job, and I certainly he's a great coach, but you have got to look at your 4 games remaining. Remember what we keep saying in the AFC: 10 wins. You're going to feel really good if you have 10 wins, especially in the AFC North. I think the team that gets to 10 wins in the AFC North, they're going to win the division. Yeah. And Baltimore has the advantage because they're a game up already in the win column. Even though they've fallen on hard times, they lost to Cleveland, they're already at 8 wins. They got 4 games left behind 2 wins. You have 2 massively important games remaining on your schedule. And it's not the Packers game this week, and it's not the Rams game in week 17. That everyone wants to say, like, oh, that's flashy because it's Lamar versus Aaron, or it's Lamar versus Stafford, and those are flashy brands. The important games are week 16, you're in Cincinnati, and week 18, you host the Steelers. That's the season for the Ravens right now. Can you win those 2 games? If I'm the Ravens, I test Lamar through the week, see how he's feeling Wednesday and Thursday. If there is any hindrance to where the doctors say, listen, rest will do him wonders, I rest him. And I say, white flag against the Packers, obviously try to win the game. That, what's his name? The backup quarterback. He's fun to watch. You beat my Bears.
Huntley, yeah.
Huntley, he's fun to watch, and he is 70% of Lamar Jackson. He's not nearly the thrower, but he's fast. He can do the short game stuff. He can run their run offense. I'd go out with him. Maybe try to shock the Packers. It's in Baltimore. Can you compete? And you know what I mean? And maybe that's what John Harbaugh's doing all week long. He's saying, no, it's going to be Lamar. And then you make that switch. But the season for the Ravens, it is week 16 and week 18, the Bengals and the Steelers. That's it. I'd be 100% focused on those 2 games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's the divisional games matter so much in the NFL, but they matter even more in a division like the AFC North, where everyone is within a game of each other, battling it out. There was something interesting in this game. So the Browns ended up winning by 2, 24-22. The Ravens were down and out early, end up coming back, but the Browns end up staving them off there. The interesting part to me from what I saw from Brett Hundley was that, and it's been perplexing to me about how Baltimore has kind of run their offense this year. It's been sluggish. People have been wondering what's not working, and I'm not going to pretend like I know the magic answer. But I do think that, especially during their rally, they got the ball in their playmakers' hands quick and let them get yards after the catch. This is something we haven't seen with the Lamar offense this year. It's been more trying to push the ball downfield as much as possible. But we saw Mark Andrews have a great game when they got him the ball within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. They got Rashad Bateman involved in this game. They got, Marquise Brown. Like, maybe work your playmakers a little bit more at the line of scrimmage and let them, because they got speedsters. They have the athleticism. Maybe that'll be something that they can focus on more and take the pressure off Lamar a little bit more too, if this injury tends to linger a little bit.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I also think, Myles Garrett showed up, and I don't know how much more time TJ Watt's going to miss, but at this point in time, Myles Garrett, the dude is just unreal. And I mean, the Browns defense won that game. It was not a Baker Mayfield, 3 touchdowns looking perfect. I mean, this was the Browns defense winning that football game. And I get it. They played against a backup quarterback for a lot of the game, but he's just a monster. He really is. And at this point in time, to me, especially if he plays the rest of the season and TJ Watt who knows when he gets back, I think Myles Garrett's making his case.
Oh, he's definitely making his case. He's absolutely in the running. It does look, from what I'm understanding, that Watt will be back this week.
Well, there you go.
They said it was a mild groin strain, and given that they were down 29-0 at that point in the game, they decided to move on and just let him rest the rest of the game.
Was getting out of that mini bye, too. That was a Thursday night game, yeah.
Yeah, the 10 days will be important. But, the strip sack, fumble, recovery, touchdown by Myles Garrett, just one person just doing it all, is a pretty cool play. It's definitely probably the defensive highlight of the season so far. Impressive stuff there. And Baker, like Dak, who we'll talk about when we get to the NFC, unable to put the game away. And in terms of, the Cowboys were able to win it, and Baker and Cleveland were able to win it, but it wasn't because of them that they were
Yeah.
able to win it. Their defenses ended up coming up making plays, and that's the question we've had on Baker for quite some time, and it's kind of rearing its head once again in a close division battle. But they're able to pull out the win. The Chargers at the 5 seed mark played the Giants, so we weren't surprised, obviously, that the Chargers won. And maybe weren't even surprised at how well Herbert played, but that absolute bomb is like 63 yards in the air.
Moving to his right.
Guyton, moving to his right, had a split second to plant his feet and fire it. The guy is obviously a very rare arm talent in the league. He probably, in terms of all-around talent, he's probably right there with Patrick Mahomes in terms of his mobility tied into his pocket awareness and arm strength. Incredible stuff from him. He obviously was the highlight of this game, 37-21 victory over the Giants. And really, as you mentioned earlier, like his garbage time touchdowns for the Giants, that really helped save me in fantasy because Saquon Barkley got that touchdown. But I digress.
There you go.
Herbert, now the only quarterback with 30 touchdown passes in back-to-back seasons to begin a career. So
what I find fascinating about Herbert is that when you watch him play, when we talk about guys with immense talent, the names we throw in there very quickly are Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes. The young guys that you're just like, their talent jumps off the screen. But what Herbert does is he has that same talent where you're just like, the dude's got insane talent, but he plays the game technically, like
in much more structured.
He works within structure, which is fascinating. It's almost, there's a Tom Brady-esque structure to the way he plays, like a Mac Jones-esque structure to the way he plays. But yet there's these flashes where you're like, that guy just did something that Brady could never do, that Manning could never do, that only guys like Favre, Mahomes, Rodgers can do. And even Rodgers, like immense talent, but he's an artist. You watch it and it's artistic. You watch Herbert, it's like a robot, but then he does things where you're like, that's not human. Like that is, what was that? Like that's insane. And so Herbert, I mean, really does. He really is fascinating, fun to watch. The Chargers, they're in an interesting spot. They kind of come and gone this season on these little waves, and they find themselves, after losing to the Broncos a couple weeks ago, beating the out of the Bengals, taking care of the Giants at home. And again, I don't want to put too much stock in it because this Giants team is bad. They're really bad, and they don't have their quarterback. They're in, all this, that, and the other. But what do good teams do? Good teams take care of bad teams when they're supposed to. And the Chargers definitely did that. So you have to feel good about that with a rookie head coach and a second-year quarterback to have the maturity to take care of a bad team when they're serve them on a platter. They're at 8 wins now. So of the wild card teams, they're the only ones at 8 wins. So they're the only wild card team in that group of, the Bengals, the Browns, the Steelers, the Colts, all those other teams we've been talking about, Miami in this wild card hunt for the AFC, the Bills, they're the only ones that have to find a way to just win 2 of the last 4. They've just, you know what I mean? And that is huge to them. They have a Texans, I'm pretty sure, on their schedule. So can you find a way, if you are the Chargers, I don't know if it's beating. I don't know if that means you're going to beat Kansas City this week. Kansas City's been playing really good football. We're going to know a lot more about the Chargers and Kansas City by Friday morning. But can you find a way? You have the Texans the following week, Broncos, Raiders. The Chargers got to feel really good about getting 2 of those 4 wins. Can you get 2 of 4? I think they could possibly get more. I think they're more alive for the division and possibly hosting a playoff game than a lot of people think, because they kind of rode the Chargers off midseason when they went through a lull. But all of a sudden now, because of Buffalo taking a step back, Cincinnati taking a step back, them beating Cincinnati, they're in a spot where it's like, crap, the Chargers are not only very alive for the playoffs, but they're very alive for maybe even hosting a playoff game.
They're one of those teams where you're like, I'd be terrified if my team was having to face them in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, hosting the Chargers would not be fun.
No, definitely not. I mean, you'd feel probably more comfortable playing Tennessee, playing, gosh, probably New England, the Colts. Like, those are teams where, yes, they've had a lot of success, but man, like, you'd feel your chances are better because the Chargers can make you just embarrass you real early.
They're a walk off the bus. Look at the the program. You get the program. You're like, oh, bleep this. But what you have to remember, what's going to be fascinating about this playoffs, especially in the AFC, the dominant AFC team has a rookie quarterback, but the greatest coach of all time. The other teams in the AFC, a Titans team, their identity was taken from them, stolen from them. And then a team like the Chargers is playing great football and peaking right now, a rookie head coach and a second-year quarterback. So it's, to me, if you're a Mahomes, if you're, you got to be feeling good. And that's why Baltimore, again, veteran coach, veteran MVP quarterback, it goes back to that smart, think through this. The AFC could all collapse around you in the playoffs with a rookie quarterback there, a team with no identity, young coach. Like Baltimore, Kansas City, they're the veteran coaches, veteran quarterbacks that are playing well right now in the AFC.
Yep. It's one of those things where you could almost pencil it in at certain points based on some of those factors, who's going to be in the hunt at this point of the season. And that's kind of where we're at. All right, we can skip over the Colts because we talked about them at the 6th seed and they were on a bye this week. So nothing really impacting them currently, but the Bills at the 7th seed, they did play the Buccaneers in a wildly entertaining game.
Good game at the end.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal game. Tom looked great early. Then they struggled to sustain drives there in the second half as Buffalo came back, forced overtime, and then Tom Brady gets touchdown pass number 700, which, by the way, they had that guy sprinting to get that football so that they made sure that 700th football would not go into the stands to win it in overtime there to Brashad Perriman. Tampa just found a way to win this game. They jumped out early too. It's one of those things, though, where it's like watching the Bills come back in that game. You're like, my God, this team is so much firepower. Like Josh Allen throws the hardest ball in the league. And the way that they were able to come back with him, especially with him running it too. I mean, a lot of designed runs that he did a lot of damage here. It's a tough loss for Buffalo, but I think in the scheme of things, you look at that comeback they had and the fight they had and the ability that they had to go to toe with, one of the top 3 teams in all football.
Yeah.
I think you walk away still feeling okay, especially because it was a loss in the NFC. So it didn't destroy what they have going, especially when you're looking at their schedule that is fairly easy, Mark, to end the season. I mean, really, they play the Panthers next week. You got to feel good about that. It's really the Patriots game that they go on the road. That is the only one that they would probably look at and say, like, that's a game we really got to have. Because after that, it's Falcons, Jets that, barring just a meltdown, they should have in the bag.
Yeah. It's fascinating. If you're a Bills fan, it's weird. It's funny for a lot of these fan bases that have not had success recently, like Cleveland and Buffalo. You're having to deal with the harder schedules now because you're winning. You're the winning team, so you get that first and second place schedule. Exactly. You look at Buffalo's schedule, you look back on it. They've had a tough schedule. You had to play Kansas City, you had to play Tennessee, you had to play Pittsburgh to open the season. And then when you drop games, like weird games like that loss to the Jags. It's one of those things where if Buffalo misses the playoffs, you can't feel bad for them because you had games in hand that you couldn't find a way to win. But if I was a Buffalo Bills fan this morning, you're looking at the mirror going yourself, we're not a Super Bowl team. We're just not, because you have a team that should be built around the fact that the city of Buffalo and what Buffalo does well, and you don't have a running game at all. And I think it's one of those things where now Josh Allen's in the walking boot. He's getting beat up. He's doing everything he can. He had an incredible drive to get them back into that game in the third quarter and then keep them alive, get them in overtime. He is a special player. And I still believe that he's a top 5 talent. I think he's a top 5 quarterback. He's a special player in this league. Buffalo's commitment the next year, and their GM has to be on the hot seat about this. So I don't think it's Sean McDermott. I think Sean McDermott's a very good coach, but their commitment has to be building up their front seven on defense, their defensive line, their offensive line. Buffalo has got to look a lot more like Cleveland, the way they run the ball. You got to go get yourself a running back that's like a Nick Chubb, and an offensive line that wants to maul people like Philly's offensive line. You've got to find that. That's because Josh Allen and what he does really well in September, he's going to get beat up because he likes to move the ball. And this is a point in time where Buffalo needs to be running the ball, play action stuff. Josh Allen beat you over the top. I mean, Tampa Bay embarrassed them with just blitzing. They just like, screw it. We're going to blitz, all out blitz every time because we know you're not going to run the ball and we know you can't block it. Your blocking's terrible and you can't run the ball. So we're just going to bring blitzes every bleeping play. And that's, if I was playing Buffalo, if I was the Panthers next week, if I was the Patriots, Bills, any of these teams, I would just do exactly what Tampa did. Now, Tampa's defense is very good. I don't know if you can recreate it, but that's the game plan. They don't run the ball. And unless it's Josh Allen, and Josh Allen is beat up right now. If I'm the Bills, you got to feel good, as you said, because the schedule's there to make the playoffs. But it's still disappointing because this was a Bills team that most likely at this point is probably not going to win their division. And for a team that was in the AFC title game last year, and things were supposed to be going on the up and up, to be undone by the fact that your general manager didn't put you in a good enough position with a running back and an offensive line, it hurts.
Yeah, and we talked about that preseason, that like if teams, you don't have to be great at running the football to make it in that tournament, but you have to be able to do it situationally at times. And they really, like, the only run game they have really is screens and some dump offs to Devin Singletary. But in terms of mano-a-mano, 4th and 1, like, the only thing you trust is a Josh Allen run. You can't trust a handoff at that point. So those are tough things for them to overcome down the stretch into the postseason. But they find themselves, in it right now. And they have, as we mentioned, the schedule to be able to pull it off moving forward. Let's just, just a quick look at a few of these teams in the hunt here, Mark. The 8 seed, the Browns at 7-6, big win for them over the Ravens. The Bengals, obviously a really tough, close loss to the 49ers. I'm sure we'll talk more about that matchup when we go through the NFC. The Broncos, big win over the Lions at the 10. And, then it's Steelers, Raiders, Dolphins there to kind of round things out. I mean, anyone in this picture here that you feel comfortable saying is going to be in the playoffs at some point? Like, is there a team of this grouping that you think for sure will be in the playoffs come, January?
Well, I like, as far as the wild cards go at this point in time, I feel really good about the Chargers and I feel good about Buffalo. I also feel good about Indy. So those three that are already.
Do you think what we're at right now is probably a good barometer?
The hard thing for me is Cleveland. You look at Cleveland, they have got to get to 10 wins. And they're hosting the Raiders. I think they'll win next week. But then they're in Green Bay on Christmas Day. There's no way Aaron Rodgers is losing on Christmas Day, national audience in Lambeau to this Cleveland team. This is not happening. He's playing elite football right now. Now, unless his toe falls off and they actually have to give him surgery. And then they're in Pittsburgh the following week before hosting the Bengals. Where are their 3 wins? It's tough. I mean, the Bengals, I trust the Bengals offense more right now. I like the Browns playing good defense, but they have got to find a way to beat Big Brother in Pittsburgh. A Big Ben that right now, Pittsburgh's the biggest roller coaster team in the NFL. Seriously. It's hard for me to find them consistently, to be convinced they could get to 10. I love Cincinnati more than Denver. But again, I think I'll have a better clarity on those 2 teams after they play this week. But then if you're the Bengals, you host the Ravens, you host the Chiefs, and you're in like, how do they got
in the dog pound? Yeah, it's a very tough stretch for them.
Very tough for a young Bengals team that's overall overperformed expectations regardless. If I was a bet man, and I am a betting man, Let me check Indy's schedule really, really quick one more time. I felt good about Indy when we were talking about it. Yeah, they have. Well, oh God, they have the Colts and the Raiders, but they're in Arizona and they host the Patriots. So maybe they're the 9-win team that gets in. One of these teams is going to get in with 9. Indy's already got tiebreakers over Buffalo, Cleveland, and Denver based on win percentages. I mean, it's gonna be tight. I think if anything, right now I would predict that Buffalo gets to the 5 seed, Chargers will get the 6 seed, and Indy will have an edge over Cleveland in a 9-win team and is the 7 seed. Right now, that's my gut.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to call right now, but I think I'm going to stick with Denver because the next 2 weeks I think are very winnable games for them. I think, the Bengals game is not going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be extremely difficult, but it's at home in Mile High. Tough environment for Joe Burrow to play in, tough environment for that offense. They're not going to be able to run the ball very well with Joe Mixon because Denver can shut that down pretty well. So, that's the momentum that could really catapult them into the latter part of the schedule. Really tough ending at Chargers versus Chiefs.
Yeah.
But I feel good about Denver getting to 9 wins and getting that 7th seed at the end. So we'll see. We'll see how it shakes out. I mean, Cincinnati, I think, would be the other one that I have way more confidence in Cincy than I do Cleveland. Overall as a team.
I agree.
So
can I ask you about Miami really quick? I mean, Miami, The thing about Miami is their peak is 9 wins and they'd be their peak is still be able to get to 10 wins.
They could get to 10.
Yes, because they were on a bye this week. They host the Jets. They're in New Orleans. They're in Tennessee, and then they host New England. So I feel really good about them the next 2 weeks.
Not a bad schedule. Yeah.
Can they get to 8-7? They beat the Jets. They beat the Saints. They're 8-7. You're then staring down a trip to Tennessee and then hosting New England. There'll be players in the last 2 weeks. That Tennessee team at this point in time, Tennessee's got to feel good that they're home in that game. If your schedule looking ahead, but Dolphins would be on a massive win streak at that point in time, playing incredible football because they're already on a 6-game win streak, 7-game win streak, and
yes,
so that would get them up to a 9-game win streak when they go to Tennessee. I mean, that's unheard of. That'd be crazy.
It'd be a wild turnaround. I mean, turnaround. If they make the playoffs, you almost have to give Coach of the Year to Brian Flores. I mean, there are so many candidates. There are like Zach Taylor. If the Bengals make it, that could be it. But man, I mean, if Brian Flores is able to rally this team to a playoff spot after what they went through,
so much of what, if you're a Miami fan, in a weird way, you've got to be rooting for New England because you want New England week 18 to be resting, to have the 1 seed and to be resting. So it's a weird game to play if your schedule looking ahead. Miami, I'll throw them in there as a team that they will be around. All these teams are going to be around because so many of them play each other. So we're not going to really know. The Chargers have a chance to really solidify themselves this week against Kansas City. But all the other wild card teams right now, I mean, it's flip a coin with a lot of these games.
Yeah, a lot in play, and it's going to be awesome down to the wire as it is every season. That's why we love the NFL, because it's always there. It's not missing any of the dramatics at the end there. All right, before we switch over to the NFC slate, let's talk about our bold strategy of the week.
Yes.
And this one comes a few days ago in the Thursday night game. We mentioned briefly the Steelers-Minnesota game in which Pittsburgh was down 29-0. Has an incredible second half, just infuriating how up and down this team is. Dalvin Cook obviously runs all over them in the first half. Second half, they come all the way back, and it's 36-28. Final drive, they get all the way towards the goal line, and then miss a beautiful pass by Ben. It was just a better play by Harrison Smith. Knocks the ball out of Pat Freiermuth's hands. Game over. But so close. They were right there. But on that final drive, this is it's tough to even explain and say because of how ridiculous it is. On the final drive, they're facing a 4th and 2 midfield. Obviously, this is for the game. It's a short, shallow slant to Claypool that's completed. and Chase Claypool rolls over the receiver, and there's about 35 seconds left. No timeouts for Pittsburgh. Got to keep the ball moving. But instead, Claypool gets down on one knee and does his little first down dance. Just casual, slow to get up, just clearly no awareness at all, Mark, of what's going on. Trey Turner comes over sprinting to get the ball out of his hands. Like, we need to move. We got to get the ball spiked here. And in the midst of that, contentious handoff or whatever, actually Eric Kendricks was the one that batted the ball away. And then it goes bumbling and they lose another 5 seconds out of that ordeal, end up spiking it. Chase Claypool acting all pissed off after the play. And then in the post-game presser doubles down and blames Trey Turner for coming over to get the ball out. And he's like, well, I did my thing. And then the ref wasn't even there yet. So I don't see what the big deal is. It's like, the lack of awareness, man, it's mind boggling, really.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him.
Yeah, it's been and that's after coming off of the comments of him basically saying, can Mike Tomlin let us play music in practice?
Yeah.
I got to be honest. I think it's one of those moments where if you're Chase Claypool's agent, someone in his camp did him a disservice. I mean, he's a young kid. Everyone's prone to make mistakes. Not going to say the holier than thou, but you had a bad week of press anyways, with the basically coming out looking very immature and doing what you did with the music thing and Mike Tomlin responding the way he did. Someone is going to say, listen, you make that boneheaded play. You clearly, the video evidence, you can't lie. Video doesn't lie. It does. You had no idea that the importance of getting up, team player, not about you. Get the ball down. Let's go. Now, whether that's his fault, whether that's Ben's fault, whether that's someone not being in his ear, it doesn't matter. You didn't have the awareness. So own up to it. But someone, his agent, someone in his camp has got to text him right after the game, be like, apologize, say that, it's on me, take the blame, take the ownership, and move on. Like, it would not be a story anymore if he's like, listen, I total boneheaded move. I got to be better. My team deserves better. Feel like I cost us some seconds there. It was on me. I got to be better. Move on. It's a non-story.
Right.
Non-story. But it's the fact that you have video evidence of him having zero awareness, and then video evidence of him throwing like a tantrum.
Yes.
Yeah. Everyone else is looking at him like, come on, dude. And he's looking at them like screaming, like pounding his foot like a tantrum. Like, and I only wish you could know what he was yelling in that moment. And then for him to come out and blame a teammate, not take ownership, it's a really bad look. And it's funny, before we started recording, I had said to you when we talked about this being our bold strategy, Pittsburgh is great. They are so good at drafting wide receivers, drafting running backs, and drafting linebackers. Like, they have a gift. They got a gift at doing that. But recently, these guys, the wide receivers, I don't know what it is there, but Antonio Brown into Juju Smith, into Chase Claypool. It seems like their number one guys over the past 5 years have just kind of unraveled. They've all shown they're all extraordinarily talented, but they've all kind of unraveled mentally in moments. And I don't know what's in the Three Rivers over there, what's in the water in the Three Rivers, but it's weird to see because it's just like he never seemed as though his rookie year was that kind of guy, and he's like grown into it.
Yeah, it's I think it is just kind of the being young and immature at times. I will say though, like Deontay Johnson's the number one on this team.
Yes.
Like, it's that, and he's incredible, and there haven't been any issues with him. But it is, part of it, it was weird. Ben afterwards too was like, it's not my job to have to, and it was kind of weird. It was like, well, it is. You're the leader of the team. Like, you should be talking to him about this. He deflected it to Tomlin. I almost took that as like it was a shot at Tomlin for saying,
I agree,
this is happening too much with your team, where you don't hold these guys accountable enough for their actions. And Chase Claypool got benched earlier in that game for getting a penalty, where he's now been penalized 8 times. The second highest receiver in the league has been penalized 5 times. And for a guy that's not producing, that's a big problem. Like, he's not even. It's not like he has 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns as he's having that. So that's an issue. But yeah, bizarre moment. Strange, like he did quote unquote own up to it by saying, I got to be better. But he said that and then continued to say, well, Trey came over there, knocked the ball out of my hands, blah, blah, blah. So it's, it really wasn't an apology then. So yeah, there's a strange circumstance there for sure. I don't know if they would have won them game, but it almost certainly would have given them an extra 5 seconds and another shot at the end zone at the end of the game.
And
that's all you can ask for.
It's tough. That ball was in his head. And I mean, it was a great play by the Vikings. And for the Vikings, we're going to get to the NFC here now. They're in a precarious spot. And just once again, it just goes to show you, though, the difference between like the top of the league and the middle and the bottom. Though that game was the epitome of like two middle of the league teams where they both show flashes of like, man, these teams could really maybe compete. And then they show flashes of like, oh, yeah, that's why they're in the middle of the league.
Yeah, they're a tale of two halves constantly for these teams. And that's been an issue all season for both of them, and that's why they're in the spot that they're in.
Totally.
So Arizona obviously is atop the NFC. They have been for the majority of the season.
Massive game tonight.
Huge game. They are 10-2. They take on the Rams at 8-4 this week. And the Packers are the 2 seed at 10-3. Bucks at 10-3 are the 3 seed, and then we get to the 4 seed with the Cowboys at rounding out the division winners at 9-4. The 3 wild card spots: Rams at the 5 seed, 8-4, and then 7-6 are the 49ers after that big win against the Bengals. Moving to the 6 seed, Washington hanging on to a 7 seed here. So let's start with the 1 seed Arizona Cardinals tonight. I mean, obviously this is the biggest game of the season for them, not just because it's the most recent game, but it's a divisional game in which they're trying to stave off the only team that could really, like, if they lose tonight, Mark, their spot, not just in the 1 seed, but in the division, is threatened big time. If they win, you feel great now about you almost lock up the division at that point.
They have a chance to do what Tennessee did to Indy and sweep the season series and then even add an extended game. It's a massive game for the Rams. It really is. It's their. The Rams, I still feel the Rams will make the playoffs because in the NFC, it's different. The NFC, there could be 2 9-win teams that make it. Like the Rams already being an 8-win team, they will find a way to win 1 or 2 games down the stretch. We'll get in the Rams schedule here in just a bit. So I'm not worried about the Rams making the playoffs. But if the Rams want to reassert themselves into we're first class on the Super Bowl plane, we have righted the ship. We're running the Sean McVay offense, running the football, getting back to what makes us successful. Tonight, they have a chance to prove it on national TV against the best in the league right now in the Arizona Cardinals, at least record-wise. For the Cardinals, their goal, if you're a Cardinals fan, say you lose tonight, you're still at 10 wins, you're still at 10-3, and at 10-3, the only thing that's a struggle for you then is you would fall behind Green Bay because you lost the head-to-head to Green Bay, but you would stay ahead of Tampa, I believe. So if you're Arizona, say you lose tonight, that's a worst case scenario, right? You still then are in Detroit. You're still then in Dallas and you host Seattle with hosting the Colts in between. So if you're looking for the 1 seed in the NFC right now, it looks like 13 wins could lock it up. If you're the first team to get to 13 wins. So if you're Arizona, that's what makes tonight so huge. That gets you to 11. You can almost say probably right in the Lions and the Seahawks game as getting you to 13. Then you could really lock it up with can you take care of the Colts at home or take care of the Cowboys on the road, get to 14 and really assert yourself in the 1 seed. They have a lot going for them, but losing tonight makes it more difficult. Then they're looking at the 1 seed saying, if we want the 1 seed, we got to win 3 of 4. And that's going to be tough with that schedule 3 of 4 because the Colts, Cowboys, and a divisional game against the Seahawks are never easy.
Right. Yeah. The Seahawks could win that game. You wouldn't, put it out of the realm of possibility, especially because they're a team that still, feels that they can get to 9 wins and an outside chance at maybe getting there. I mean, they're 5-8, obviously not set up in a good spot, but if they do somehow go on a run here, they'd have an opportunity. So you're going to get a hungry Seattle team regardless in that moment. And that could be an impediment to them for sure. the Packers and Bears game, Mark, obviously started great for the Chicago. You couldn't really ask for a much better start in a
you
game
couldn't.
in Lambeau.
Yeah.
And just, second half really is just starting to unravel a little bit. Who would have guessed that, two of the biggest playmakers for the team would be Jakeem Grant and Demarius Byrd, but that's what we got yesterday with some just huge plays. I thought overall Justin Fields played very well in a really hostile environment, tough spot.
With rookie tackles.
Yeah. And
Jenkins did not have a great game being thrust into action.
That's a tough position to be put into right out of the gate there. And you were tweeting about it, so I'll kind of let you go after it. But yeah, Fields played well. He was just not helped at all by the coaching staff. And that was something you were tweeting throughout. Just the play calling was really what frustrated you seemingly more than anything else in that game.
Not only the calling, but the design of the plays. I mean, you watched a first half where Jalen Johnson had an incredible first half. And that's why Jalen Johnson is starting to get some recognition as one of the really good corners in this league. And he's young, only second year. And Jalen Johnson had a great first half against Davante Adams, a fantastic first half, as good a first half as you can have against who I think is the best wide receiver in the NFL, besides maybe DeAndre Hopkins when he's 100% healthy. But they go battle 1A, 1B. Adams right now, best wide receiver in the NFL. What Green Bay did at halftime was say, all right, okay, so Jalen Johnson is now a problem. We got to deal with him. Let's make it easy on our star wide receiver. And let's get him in motion. Let's get him to balls in the backfield. Let's get him quick little things, get it in his hand. How many times have you seen the second half, Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay offense moving the pocket, off balance throws, quick things to get the ball in their playmakers' hands, like we were talking about with the Ravens when after Lamar went down, and then just let your playmakers get a chunk, 8 yards, 7 yards, 12 yards, and then when that keeps happening and you're running it out of bunch formations and out of the I formation or under center, then the run game gets going and Dillon gets going and Jones gets going. They had great games. Meanwhile, the Bears in the second half, and they did all first half too, stagnant. Justin Fields in shotgun, bunch, 2 wide receivers to the right, 2 wide receivers to the left. They run nothing but curls, digs, and outs. And you have no creativity, let's get Allen Robinson on the move. Get him a quick throw to get him in the backfield and get moving. Let's line up under center and roll out, move the pocket to the left. Let's actually run David Montgomery. If you look at the box score, the Bears had 23 rushes for 137 yards. If you look at the running back carries, the Bears had 10, 12, 13, 14 rushes for 60 yards. Justin Fields had 9 carries for 74 yards. It's completely unacceptable. And again, Matt, if you go back, people are going to say, well, Mark, you're now on the fire Nagy fire pace train, but you were a guy who said at the end of the season that you were okay keeping Nagy in pace. And I was. And I said, I know verbatim what I said at the time, because we knew at the end of last season, Mitchell Trubisky wasn't Patrick Mahomes. And he wasn't anywhere even close enough to where it's like, there's only one of one Patrick Mahomes. But now the NFL is very set up where you need a guy who looks a lot more like Josh Allen, Herbert, Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes. You need a guy who looks a lot more like that than you need a guy who looks a lot more like Mitch Trubisky, Tua Tagovailoa, and those guys. Like, in order to win, you need a special talent. And so I said, well, we know Mitch isn't the guy. And I think the Bears were smart to not extend him, to not pay him, and to look and get Justin Fields. And they got lucky he fell to them. And the Giants made a terrible trade and let Justin Fields get to Chicago. They got lucky. And so you had to have a season of Nagy without Trubisky to realize, all right, does now he flourish? Is it now like, no, his offense actually is really good and just Mitch couldn't operate it? Now what we've learned is Trubisky wasn't the guy, and Nagy's offense is pathetic. It's embarrassing, it's stupid, and it's pathetic. Like, it is zero creativity besides, hey, Wildcat. And like, you see the moments of like, wow, that's a great play design with the screen toss to Grant where he had all the blockers in front of him and he runs for a touchdown. But that's one play. That's it. Like that's like there's not then like, oh, here's 10 of these in a
few
row.
and far between.
Yeah. And listen, Matt Nagy won Coach of the Year at 12-4, and that was an incredible season. And he took the league by storm, and he had a lot of things that were a lot like that. Then the offense since then has been very stagnant, very one-hit wonders with those plays making returns. 8-8, 8-8. Now you're going to have a losing season, and the wheels are falling off, and the coaching is clearly a deficiency. And I'll say this, he hasn't made people better. Allen Robinson, we know, is talented. There are people in the league who are salivating to get Allen Robinson and sign Allen Robinson. That should show you, wait a minute, shouldn't we maybe, I don't know, find a way to keep him and like use him?
It is crazy because he's the guy. Like, it's so obvious that he's someone
Mooney
to keep.
Is a find, and Ryan Pace deserves credit for finding Darnell Mooney. But Darnell Mooney is not made better by Matt Nagy. Darnell Mooney just makes bleeping awesome catches. He's got a great connection with Justin Fields, but all the routes are like deep outs and digs and comebacks. So there's zero creativity. The offense is pathetic. I know we're going to talk about good teams here from here on out, but that game and the second half of that game is another criminal example of real talent wasted in the 4 years of Matt Nagy had to be control of this Bears team. Really bad roster decisions. Look how good Khalil Herbert is. Why are we paying Tariq Cohen how much money to be injured on the bench? And it just goes to show you Pace can't get out of his own way either. They both need to go. Pace had the chance to hire Fox. He had the chance to hire Nagy. You can't give him a third head coach. You can't let Pace keep giving Jimmy Graham, Nick Foles, Andy Dalton, Tariq Cohen, that kind of money. You can't let him do it. Even though he finds some guys, and he does find some talent, you can't let him keep holstering your roster in that way and hamstringing your roster in that way and signing guys like Matt Nagy and trusting him is just been a disaster in that way. That being said, the Packers, they are the best team in football right now. They just are.
I was going to say, like, it's the way that because their backs are against the wall in this game, essentially. It's like, whoa, man, you're almost about to, be embarrassed a little bit because of what you said about the Bears owning them. For them to come back against that, the defense played well, very well early on, as you mentioned. So, for them to come back against that defense, because people will say, oh, but the Packers just beat the Bears. Like, the Bears aren't a good football team. But it's like, but it's also a divisional game where while he's owned the Bears, it's not like the Bears never just like give it up. It's a competitive game in terms of how the Bears approach it. And they have a good defense. So it's still like for them to come back and win at 45-30. That was impressive, and I do think that they're the best team.
Yeah, and they scored 45 points in 3 quarters.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
because they were held scoreless in the first quarter.
Yep.
And that just and Aaron Rodgers, when he's that good, you look at it, you're watching it, and you're like, if you tell me, you cannot tell me watch that game last night going, that is difficult for Aaron Rodgers. Nothing about that was difficult for Aaron Rodgers. It's easy. And even that early on, and when he was getting sacked, he wasn't getting mad. He kind of knew it was like, all right, just hang around. We'll be fine. We'll figure it out. He has faith in his head coach to make the adjustments, and they did. They made changes at halftime, and they got Devontae Adams going, and they are a physical football team like we haven't seen the Packers in the past couple years. They're very, very scary right now, and the Bears need to completely blow up their coaching staff. And now the scary thing is the Bears reports are Leslie Frazier's that is a prime candidate. And he's on the 85 Bears. He's a former Bear. But dear God, you see Buffalo's defense? He's the defensive coordinator for Buffalo. Yeah. Dear God.
Yeah.
Don't do that. I know he's the closest thing to Lovie Smith, like quiet defensive guy that is like old, but don't do that. Don't do that. Brian
And here's the thing with for Green Bay moving forward here, because I do agree they're the best team in football. And I think by the end of the year, they're only one game out with Arizona here. And we mentioned, Arizona's got, a good opportunity to get to 13 wins, but, they've got some tough game or two coming up, including the one tonight. Meanwhile, the Packers schedule, Mark, I mean, yes, they go on the road at the Ravens next week.
Injured Lamar.
It's Ravens-Browns the next 2 weeks. They're getting a win out of one of those two, if not both.
I would agree.
So let's just give them 1-1 in that stretch, and then they end the season Vikings Lions.
Win.
Those are wins. So the Packers now with that are
13.
at 13 wins. I mean, they're very likely going to be the 1 seed here, I think, going forward. Obviously, it'll be a tight race with Arizona, but yes, this team is well on the path to being that 1 seed, and now the road to the playoffs is going to go through Lambeau in the NFC. Like, good luck, to a lot of these teams. Good luck on that.
Well, where's Tampa? What they have the tiebreaker over Tampa based on best win percentage in conference games.
Yes.
So in conference, Green Bay is 8-2 versus Tampa is 6-3.
And so that's why with Tampa, the thing for them is that they have a very easy schedule moving forward as well.
They can go forward.
But it's all, it's 3 divisional games in that stretch. And so, yes, it's the Panthers twice. You assume that they will get wins there. And then at the Jets and then Saints next week. The Saints game could be a trap game of sorts.
Sunday night football.
You don't want to rule out the Saints at all. But if it's Taysom Hill, you trust the Bucs defense against Taysom Hill. I'd probably give the Panthers one of these 2 wins just because they're good defense. And, you never know. It's just kind of those divisional games. But, I mean, them going 3-1, they're also at 13 wins. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be quite the race here.
I think the Bucs are going to get to 14, and you know what,
they absolutely could,
unless they rest people in week 18 because the Cardinals or the Packers are like they know they're in the 3, they know they're stuck in the 3, and it's not going to matter, or they know they're stuck in the 2, and it's not going to matter. So. The Bucs. I didn't even realize how easy this Bucs schedule was down.
Yeah, I mean they've set themselves up nicely.
That's crazy. I mean they're on a what? Since that Washington loss, they're on a 1, 2, 3.
They're on a 4-game win streak. There'll be 8 games if they win out.
Yes, I mean Jesus, Mary and Joseph.
But they could do it. They could easily do it. I mean,
what a schedule for the Bucs. Yeah, I mean
so far of the remaining schedules that we've gone through, that is by far the easiest, right? I mean, it's got to be.
It has to be. It really does. And they're at home for the Saints game, which is the tough one, and they get one of the Bucs game. They're one of the Panthers games at home.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think? Crazy. Do you so? Obviously, this was a big game for Tom Brady. He hit 700 touchdown passes. He passed Drew Brees on the all-time completions list, so he now has the most completions all time. And he's now 33-3 against Buffalo, which is still the most by any quarterback against another team. Big game for Tom Brady. Do you think that he wins the MVP? Is he the MVP right now in your eyes?
Well,
if you were to vote on it now, obviously.
He's got the stats and he's got the wins. His team is in it. Here's the thing. I don't think they give it to Rodgers. I mean, unless Rodgers goes undefeated in these last games and he gets a 1 seed, I think it's between him, Rodgers. I don't see anyone in the AFC winning it. Is that weird? I just I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't either. Some people were saying TJ Watt, and the Steelers would have to win out and make the playoffs for that to even be close, but they're not going to give it to a defensive player. It's just not, it doesn't happen.
I'll tell you, the only person in the AFC who I could see, listen, if Mahomes goes undefeated down the stretch and puts up giant numbers,
could be
him or Herbert, because they play each other. So
that's a good point. Actually, Herbert probably, if Herbert gets
goes
ahead
undefeated, of that, it gets to 12-5 and puts up big numbers like he just did in all these games. Either one of those guys could have a real chance, but otherwise, to me, Kyler missed too much time.
They won in his absence. That's the only knock against his case for MVP is that they won with Colt McCoy.
Now, Kyler, Stafford, Rodgers, they all have something to say about it for sure. Because if Stafford wins out and he's brilliant down the stretch, but I think Tom right now. Listen, Tampa's good, but Tampa beats people embarrassingly because Tom Brady. Tom Brady, and I honestly don't see him retiring at some soon. He signed that 2-year extension I at this point in time, I don't see why he's not still playing, because as he keeps saying, and you keep watching it, kind of like Aaron as well, they are so ahead of defensive schemes. And when they have just a couple guys that are talented around them, what Aaron does with Devontae Adams, and like what Tom does with Gronk and with Mike Evans, it's like it's like cheating. Like, I mean, it's so easy. I've never seen football offensively this easy for guys before. They make it look so easy. I think Tom is a deserved MVP if the season. And now, obviously, he's got an easy schedule to put up some big numbers down the rest of the way to pad the stats. The stats will be overwhelming if he goes 4-0, especially, and 14-3 with a 1 seed or a 2 seed in the NFC. I think there's no reason why Tom couldn't be the MVP.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's well on his way, and he'd be the oldest MVP ever in any sport ever.
Breaking his own record.
Breaking his own record, which he had tied with Barry Bonds. So there you go. I mean, at the age of 40. So now he'd be at the age of 44 winning it. Incredible stuff. The Cowboys are there at the 4 seed. We talked about lucky to come away with the win of the Washington football team, who almost had a great comeback as themselves.
Yeah.
And we mentioned it, Dak. I don't know, Mark. I feel like he's injured in some, like it's something is weird. Like something's not looking right with him.
You know what? I don't want to play that game. If you're out there playing, I just going to assume that you're playing. I'll say this about Dak. I was against giving Dak as much money as he got. And I think it's a warning. Listen, it's a warning for a lot of teams. Dak is the best of that second tier group, in my opinion, where he's not in the Allen, Mahomes, Lamar group, because those guys have things that, like, when you watch them on TV, there's something ridiculously special, and you see the special and you see the talent. But Dak is the best of the next group that includes, I think, the Derek Carrs, maybe even the Matthew Staffords in a lot of those ways.
I think I'd take Burrow over Dak, to be honest.
Well, I would too, but I mean, and it's tough because they're young. It's hard, young. I still consider them just young, and I try not to be too hard in ranking them yet.
But I mean, even now, though, the way he's playing now, I would take Burrow over Dak. Just for the rest of the season.
I would too, but what Dak has Dak is such a leader, and Dak
absolutely.
He is so good at the microphone. Dak would never do what Big Ben did. If Amari Cooper did what Chase Claypool did, Dak would, I don't care what Amari Cooper would say at the microphone. Dak would go to the microphone and say, "That's my fault. I'm the quarterback. I'm the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, and I need to be saying in every one of their ears, this is what happens. It's my fault." So Dak, I get why Dak gets paid, and Dak, you want to build around Dak. But this is where I've struggled always with Dak and the Cowboys as far as winning Super Bowls. The rest of the roster has to be so good around him, and it is. It's close. Problem is there's a couple nagging injuries. Zeke isn't Zeke of old. And right now, they won that game because their defense. Like Micah Parsons, that defense. So can Dak, I mean, listen, the Cowboys have a fairly manageable schedule down the stretch. The Cowboys are already at 9 wins. So I think the Cowboys will win their division because I think they'll get to 10. Washington can't get to 10, and neither can Philly. So they're going to win their division because they'll win against the Giants next week in New York. They'll take care of a bad Giants team. They're going to be 10 wins. They're going to lock up their division. What does that mean for Dallas as far as going forward? I have them in my Super Bowl plane. We'll talk about in a little bit. As a team, I think they can win a game at home in the playoffs. Depending on who they play, it'll most likely be one of their own divisional opponents. Maybe a Washington. You know what I mean? Maybe a Vikings. I think they can easily get a win against one of those teams. Now, if they get the Rams, I don't know. That's going to be tough. Or if, you know what I mean? Or if they get a Niners team, you got to see how the teams are playing in that way. But I don't see this Dallas team as a team that can beat a Cardinals, a Green Bay, or a Tampa. I do not see them on that level at all.
Yeah, and even
I think that's because of Dak.
Sure. But I would even take probably the 49ers over them at this point. The way the 49ers are playing, I would feel better in the matchup with San Fran than at Dallas just because of that. They're extremely talented. They're probably going to end up going 12-5 or somewhere in that ballpark, and they're going to win their division. It's just not a team that you trust to win more than one playoff game if they can win one playoff game. So that's kind of where we stand with them. With the Rams, we already, mentioned them with the Cardinals, so maybe we don't have to spend too much time on this one, but their schedule here, obviously the next two games are huge for them. The Cardinals tonight and then the Seahawks. You got to win that Seahawks game. You have to win that one too. And then really, it's at Vikings, at Ravens. Not gimmies, tough games probably overall for both them, but really the season finale against the 49ers is likely what it's going to come down to in terms of shaping up where they stand within this, either the division or in the playoff race itself. So they don't have a cakewalk of a schedule coming up here, but it is something where they can control their destiny, and they can dictate kind of what happens. Even if they were to lose tonight, they still have that opportunity in front of them over the course of the next month to get it done.
If you're the Rams or the San Francisco 49ers, because they're the 5 and the 6 seeds right now, the thing you have to be saying to yourself, if I don't win my division, I need the 5, because the 5 plays Dallas. And you feel then really good about, you save jobs and you save careers and you make money by getting a road playoff win. And if you're the team that can go to Dallas and beat this Cowboys team, which will most likely, as you say, be a 12-win 4 seed, because we expect Tampa, Green Bay, and Arizona all to be about 13 wins or more. So that means Dallas will be that 12-win 4 seed. I would trust, I agree with you, the Niners or the Rams in Dallas in that playoff game to win. So you can save your seasons, even if you then lose the next round. You can save your season, save your job, save a lot of money, make money by that. So that 5 seed is crucial. So if you're the Rams, even if you lose tonight, I feel the Rams are going to be a playoff team because they said they're already at 8 wins. They just got to get 2 more. They'll get 2 more. But being a playoff team isn't good enough if then your first round matchup is in Green Bay or in Tampa.
Or that Arizona blows. Even,
that blows. That really blows. So
but yeah,
you want to be in Dallas if you're that wild card spot.
Absolutely. And then, the 49ers, they're in the 6th seed. We covered that. I mean, it's a similar thing for them. It's very similar scenarios, an easier schedule though for them. So yeah, I mean, they too are right in that spot where they can still, find their way through this maze, and that matchup with the Rams is probably going to be what separates them in the standings. Whether or not one leapfrogs the other.
It could be. If you're a Niners team, you got to think to yourself, the Falcons and Texans are must-win games. And then all of a sudden you're at 9 wins. So you're probably going to be in at that point. Can you steal a win against the Titans, a beat up Titans team that you guys like to play a similar brand of football, physical, in Tennessee, and then put yourself in a position to maybe get that 5 seed? I don't know, but it feels like looking at this and where the Niners are and how they've been playing football, especially that win over the Bengals, they seem like a playoff team at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And then speaking to the 7th seed, the Washington football team, we talked about this last week with their crazy division schedule that was coming up.
Yeah.
They fall to the Cowboys, a tough loss, close loss though. Now it's Eagles, Cowboys, Eagles, Giants. I mean, it's right in front of you, Washington. This is it. I mean, it's right in front of you. The next 4 weeks, you determine what's going to happen here.
Are you in or out? And it's the same for the Vikings. They're also 6-7 right behind them, and they have Bears twice, Packers once, and then the Rams. So the Bears are, can play spoiler with the Vikings, and just like the Giants and the Eagles can play spoiler with the football team. For the football team and the Vikings, one of those 2 teams is probably going to get in as that final seed. You know what I mean? Because anyone below them, do you have faith in? I mean, maybe Philly. What does Philly's schedule look like? Let's look. Giants, they have Washington twice, Giants and Cowboys. So, you're looking at teams, and then who's the other 6 and 7 team at that point in time? That's Atlanta
and the
Who do they
Saints,
have
so.
Well, I'm not counting the Saints. You can count the Saints. I won't.
I won't count them either. I don't think they're getting there.
They have the Niners, and then Lions, Bills, Saints.
Yeah, the Falcons aren't getting there.
I don't think so. So you look at, you say Eagles, Niners, and Vikings.
Yeah.
No, Eagles, Vikings,
Well,
who I just had it. Eagles,
Washington,
and Washington. One of those two teams, one of those three teams is going to be your 7th seed, probably, right?
yeah. You got to figure it's got to be one of those.
Who do you have the most faith in? Who are you going with?
Of that grouping, at this point, I'd probably go with the Vikings, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I think of those teams, I think they're the best of those teams. The problem is the schedule, obviously. That is what troubles me.
They may be the best of those two teams. I'm going to take Washington because I think they get it done against an Eagles team. They have the Eagles twice.
Right.
So for me, Washington's got to find a way to get 3 wins. Well, 3 would do it. And they have the Giants, I think, is a win. I think they win 1 against the Eagles. That's, so there's 2. Can they get 1 again against the Cowboys? I don't know. I'm going to lean with Washington. I'll ride with Washington.
Fair enough. I mean, it's going to be close either way. And we'll see next week. As we mentioned, next week will determine a lot of things. So that's how the playoff picture looks right now. Obviously, a lot to come in the next, the next 1 to 2 weeks. I think it will really be a huge determining factor on what we're looking at as we get ready for the postseason. But Mark, your Super Bowl plane, let's get that update.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, we are now left Kansas City. We're landing in Dallas. It is post week 14, and first class, there are no changes.
There's a lot of good barbecue on this trip. You're going straight from Kansas City to Dallas.
Yeah. You're getting chunky on this trip, but it's putting on weight. It's December football. Bucks, Packers, Patriots, Chiefs, Cardinals. That's first class. Those are teams that I can see right now winning the Super Bowl. Anyone else? I'm not gonna listen to your argument. I'll listen to your argument on why they could win the Super Bowl. I don't think they can. Bucks, Packers, Patriots, Chiefs, Cardinals. One of those teams is going to win the Super Bowl. Titans, Rams, Cowboys are your business class. All of them are teams I feel capable of winning a playoff game and maybe 2. Could they shock you? And if the Titans, the Rams, the Cowboys end up somehow with a nice couple breaks, win a playoff game or 2, end up in a championship game, would it shock me? No, but they're not getting through a championship game to a Super Bowl or winning a Super Bowl. Stand by, there's a lot of teams. All these teams to me feel like playoff teams. None of them right now feel like they could win multiple playoff games. Certainly, if they won 1, it'd be by incredible game, some luck involved. Browns, Ravens, Bengals, Chargers, Bills, Colts, like all AFC teams. I throw the Niners in there with the AFC and the NFC. The Niners are the one wild card team. They're not going to win a division. Wild card team, not going to say, again, they could go to Dallas and win a game.
Yeah. The only thing I think the Patriots are a great team and they scare me, and they'll win a playoff game. I don't know if I see them getting to the Super Bowl.
Bill Belichick. Right now it's Bill. Right now
it's hard to count out Bill ever. It's definitely hard to count out Bill ever. I feel with who they'd eventually have to face, either having to beat a Buffalo, which then they'd have to have beat Buffalo multiple times, which is tough to do.
Yeah.
Or Kansas City. I just don't know how equipped they are to deal with some of those teams where, more so they have to be in control to be able to win. And so far they've been able to do it. So I'm not, they're a really good team.
They were on the bye. So I thought, they couldn't move them.
Yeah. No, that's true. You can't move them. So, well, I'm excited to see what it looks like next week. Cause I think things will probably be shifting on the plane next week.
This Rams Cardinals game is going to be huge.
It's going to be huge. So we'll see what happens tonight, obviously, for Monday Night Football. And we'll be back here next week with a Week 15 recap and an increased playoff picture to really, round out where we're looking going into the final 2 to 3 week stretch of the NFL season. So hope you all enjoyed. Obviously, enjoy the next few weeks, the holiday season. Be sure to get those packages shipped out there. So I think the 18th is the final day where they say your stuff's going to get there for Christmas time. So
okay, good to know.
Be sure to get that stuff shipped out, everybody. And we'll see you here next week.